So having just finished a 30K event the weekend before last, I noticed some of the things that I could have done better for my own running performance. Being that I am my own coach, I'm looking after my own training, my own nutrition, there are a few things that I had in place that I probably could have adhered to a little bit better. So when we look at the word performance, we're looking at the product of fitness minus fatigue. So over the grand scheme of things, when we're actually doing all the running training and the strength training and looking after our nutrition, we're trying to prioritize the improvements in fitness that we want to see. And this could be directly aerobic endurance or our ability to operate above our lactate threshold when it comes to strength training, improving our strength, power output, speed, and even looking at things like coordination and balance, which is going to influence our power output and also our running economy. So we do all this work to improve our fitness, and at the same time, we're building up fatigue. When we build up too much fatigue, we don't have enough recovery. Maybe we've got too high of a training load and we're not looking after our sleep or nutrition. This is where we start to run into issues with fatigue and detriments to performance. So when it actually comes to a running event, or maybe you're just going for a time trial or a personal best, the worst thing you can do is not reduce the amount of fatigue that you've built up through those previous training blocks. So when it came to this 30K event, the thing that I could have done a lot better was made sure that I was just eating a little bit more leading into this event, but also actually stuck to the little taper that I had planned for it. Now, given that I'm building up to the Gold Coast Marathon, this was a long run on the way to that. However, I did want to hit a personal best for this. Where I went wrong with my nutrition was just the fact that in the back of my mind is maintaining a certain level of leanness. However, I know for me and for everyone in that fact, when I don't give my body enough energy because I'm focused on trying to reduce body fat, it is going to negatively impact my running performance. So how could have I changed this coming into this 30K event? It just means I would have been a little bit more switched on at making sure I was hitting my maintenance calories or even slightly above. Now, honestly, the biggest thing that I would have rewinded and changed around a little bit was my taper. So I had planned to reduce the volume and the intensity slightly, and it was all going well, but there definitely was an impulsive run one night where I went out and ran 15K, and although it was a good run, I did notice in the days to follow that bit more fatigue. I started to notice a little bit of tendon inflammation, a little bit of aching behind the knee, and I knew I had to manage this a little bit better. Now, funnily enough, that wasn't the first thing. I did head out for a hike one night and I left it a little bit late. It got very dark, and to be honest, I just didn't want to walk it for the next hour and a half to 2 hours, so I got a little bit of a trot on and sped away. Because of the terrain I was running on and the amount of declines and inclines I had, this was a different load or different stressor for the body to be used to. So the next day I pulled up, my tibialis anterior, the front of my shins were a little bit sore just from that downhill running and bracing for that impact. It was nothing that I couldn't manage, but given this was only 2 days before my actual run, it was a really silly move on my own behalf. Now you're probably wondering, why is this guy coaching runners if he's not even listening to his own plan? To be honest, I wanted to be transparent about this because I think there are a lot of coaches and athletes out there who aren't transparent with their training and nutrition all the time. They're trying to maintain the perfect image because their identity and their businesses are based on this. That's why I'm bringing it up a little bit today, but also to make it more relatable for you guys who have had a hiccup here and there. You went on that run that you shouldn't have, you ran a little bit fast or a little bit too long, you didn't fuel yourself well enough, or maybe like me, you've been focusing a little bit too much on your body composition and not fueling your body enough for optimal performance. So when it comes to actually doing this proper taper, what can we look at doing to make sure that you get the most out of your performance for the event or for the time trial or fitness testing that you're doing? When it comes to nutrition, you've got to make sure that you're getting adequate energy into your body in the lead up when you're doing all the training to make sure that you're actually getting the most out of the training sessions. But when it comes to this tapering period, this is where it becomes even more imperative. You can do the best taper with your training, but if you're not in a state where your body has got adequate energy available for all these different tissues in your body that have been exposed to all these different training stresses over time, if they haven't got enough energy for them to adequately start to repair and rebuild, you're likely still going to notice these little niggles and things over time. How this can affect you too is usually what we can see with people in prolonged calorie deficits is they have higher cortisol levels, higher stress levels. Usually what we compare with this is poorer sleep. So you're not actually getting the recovery that your nervous system needs as well. So when it comes to this tapering period, we want maintenance calories or maybe even slightly above, making sure you're still hitting that 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. However, if you are struggling to get enough food in, I would put a higher priority on getting more carbohydrates into your body. You need to make sure that you've got enough glycogen in your muscles to draw on when your body needs that energy. Another note that we can add for your nutrition is obviously making sure that you're well hydrated. Any sort of stress that is going to be imposed on your body is going to reduce your ability to reduce fatigue. Now, when it comes to tapering in your training, what are we doing? Well, we're reducing the volume, and we can also start to reduce the intensity, especially when it comes to that race week. Now, your tapering can differ, so it can start 1, 2, 3, and even 4 weeks out from an event, depending on what it is. Obviously, the longer events like the marathon or ultra marathons usually are going to require a longer tapering period because you've accumulated a lot more fatigue through your training in the lead up to this. However, this is also based on the individual. A more experienced athlete might need less of a taper. Someone who's currently dealing with some injuries may have to start a taper sooner, or someone who's built up a lot of fatigue may also have to start that taper a little bit sooner. Generally, we're looking at reducing your volume from 40 to 70%. So there's going to be a sharp reduction in the amount of training volume. At this point, it's no longer about building up your fitness. It is reducing as much fatigue as you can so you can peak performance. Now, this is where I went wrong in my own training by adding a run in here and a run in there because I didn't get as successful of a reduction in fatigue. So don't get me wrong, I actually performed quite well for the event, getting a good personal best. However, I knew going into it that I probably could have got more out of it had I listened to my own training plan and that taper that I had planned. You can obviously reduce the total mileage on each run, which is going to reduce your training volume across the week. For myself, this meant that I was starting to reduce my long runs and my base runs. My interval sessions, I was reducing the amount of intervals that I was doing. Being that this wasn't the primary event for the year, I was still doing 2 intervals during that session in the week leading into the event. However, moving into the marathon, I'll likely only be doing 1 interval as my volume is going to reduce quite a bit more than it would have for this 30K event. The combination of giving your body enough through nutrition, hydration, and sleep paired with this reduction in training volume is going to be the formula for you to get the most out of your performance. On a final note, to improve this even more, given that stress is going to be the thing that reduces your ability to reduce fatigue, you should also start to consider how you can reduce stresses in your work life, your family life, if you're really going to take a running event seriously. On a day-to-day basis for myself, this means that I've got some non-negotiable breath work which takes place each morning, and I'm very considerate of this throughout the day as well. If I notice I'm starting to get stressed out or anxious at any point, and even straight away after my runs, I'm starting to focus on my breathing. I'm starting to bring my nervous system back to that parasympathetic rest and digest state so I'm not fired up the whole time and my body starts to improve its recovery processes. Breathwork alone isn't the only thing. There are many things out there that we can do to reduce stress and switch back over to that parasympathetic nervous system. For some people, this might be reading a book, watching some TV, drawing in, writing in their journal, whatever it may be for you. I think it's time to wrap things up there for today, guys. Like I said, next week I'm going to be diving into that race week nutrition to teach you how to carb load, what you should be looking at when it comes to hydration, making sure that you don't get an upset gut when it comes to your race, and some other little tips and tricks that you can utilize to improve your performance when it comes to race day or any sort of personal best that you're trying to work towards when it comes to your running. As always, guys, leave a comment below if you've got any questions or any input of your own. I appreciate the comments that you guys leave on these videos, and I love the fact that we can all interact through this platform. That's it for today, guys. See ya.